Heaven is in my heart. Oh, heaven is in my heart. Oh, heaven is in my heart. Oh, heaven is in my heart. Everybody sing. Oh, heaven is in my heart. Can't you feel it?
Hello, I'm Mike Mazzalongo, your host for Inside the Church of Christ, a program that tries to bring you, the viewer, inside the church buildings where the churches of Christ meet. This week, we're at the Ridgecrest congregation again for a leadership seminar, especially for the ladies. Joanne North is our special guest speaker. She'll be speaking on the topic of preachers' wives, elders' wives, some of the responsibilities and challenges that these ladies face each day. So I hope you'll stay with us for this special edition of Inside the Church of Christ. We'll be right back right after this message. Jesus said, "It's not those who are healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. I did not come to call the righteous," he said, "but sinners." For this reason, sinners are welcome at the Church of Christ. For more information about the church, please contact the congregation listed here or in your local telephone directory under Church of Christ.
There was a man who needed help. A skeptical, rebellious angel in heaven had a contest with God. God said, "Look at Job. There is none like him on all the earth. He is blameless and upright. He fears God and he shuns evil." Satan said, "Strike everything he has. He will curse you to your face." So God took him on. Now the Sabaeans came in, and they carried off his 1,000 oxen, his 500 donkeys. From heaven there came fire and burned up his 7,000 sheep, and even the servants that cared for him. And then the Chaldeans came in and carried off his 3,000 camels and the servants that tended them. A great windstorm struck the house where his 10 children lived, and the house fell, and they were all lost. Well, all Job had left was his health, his wife, and his friends. So what did Job do? He tore his robe, he shaved his head, he fell to the ground, and he worshiped God. Well, Satan didn't give up. Satan never gives up. He said to God, "Now you stretch out your hand, strike his flesh and his bones. He will surely curse you to your face." Soon after, Job was afflicted with terrible sores from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. Job continued to sit among the ashes, and now he scraped himself with a broken piece of pottery. He had lost his physical wealth, he had lost his children and all his cattle, and now he had lost his health. All he had left were his friends and his wife. Surely they would help and support him. Satan knew what he was doing when he left Mrs. Job alive, because she came to Job and begged him to do exactly what Satan had in mind. She said, "Curse God and die." She was, unfortunately, Satan's ally in all this. Job, of course, made it through the big test without his wife and even without his friends. But how much more effective and less painful Job's days would have been on earth if he had had the support of his wife and his friends. Now, there was a man who needed help. This man's name was Aquila, and he lived in Rome, and his wife, of course, we know, was Priscilla, and they were ejected from the city of Rome by the Emperor Claudius. They moved to the city of Corinth, and there they set up their trade as tent makers. After they were there a while in Corinth, another tent maker named Paul found them. And Paul needed a place to stay. Would it be all right for him to stay there? You know. Wow. Well, of course, Priscilla and Aquila took him in. And probably he was their house guest for maybe up to 18 months. Okay? Priscilla was like this. She had an adventurous spirit, and she was brave, and she was outgoing. She was a hard worker and worked right beside Paul. Even we find out in 1 Corinthians 16 and Romans chapter 16 that the home met in the house of Aquila and Priscilla in both the cities of Ephesus and in the city of Rome. She let the whole house, her whole house, be open to the whole church in two different places. And if my research is correct, the church then didn't just meet 1 or 2 times a week. They often met 4 or 5 nights a week. So Priscilla was a very hospitable woman and ready to receive people into her home. Aquila and Priscilla worked together as a team. Priscilla greatly increased the effectiveness of her husband, didn't she? There was a man who needed help. Lee Boswell was a citrus grower in Florida. He lived in Lakeland, Florida with his wife and his 5 young children, who were all girls. He had 5 daughters. He was a deacon in the church there for many years, and he got up early in the morning and went out to work and came home late in the evening. And he had recently been asked to be an elder in the Lord's church. Should he do it? How could he do that? How could he work that into all of his responsibilities? His father before him had been an elder in the church, and he had seen what it took and the hours of problem solving and working with people and the decisions and the responsibility there. Could he do it? And then he thought of his wife, Margaret. Margaret was a person who could extend things. She could make things work. She could take a bolt of material.
We have a special guest, of course, our speaker for today for the special edition of Inside the Church of Christ, a special ladies edition. And our guest today is Joanne North, who is leading the sessions for the ladies. Thank you, Joanne, for being with us today.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
We're talking about elders and ministers and their wives. Obviously, you're teaching the ladies class. What do you find most challenging about being an elder's wife?
Well, I guess I've kind of grown up to doing this with my mother was an elder's wife, and then when I got married, my husband was a preacher. So the transition to an elder's wife was not a great challenge to me as far as being afraid of being in a glass house or anything like that. I've always thought the challenge in my life is just to live as a Christian before the Lord no matter what I'm in.
Amen.
So that has helped me in that aspect. But I think probably one of the greatest challenges is to reach out to find the people that have the needs and get there with as large a congregation as we have.
Mm-hmm.
But I have worked on that in saying, I can just do one at a time and take the ones that I know and do my best with that. So I don't let that pull me down. But it is a challenge because there are a lot of people that are in need, and it seems to be growing.
Right. Always seems to be more needs than time and resources.
That's right.
Yes,
and
that can be a great
I guess an aside to that is that I've always had the challenge of trying to balance taking care of family needs with that, and that's been a little bit of a challenge because that is really the woman's first responsibility is to a husband and to her family, and then to reach out to other people is the way I see it in the Lord's will for me. And so balancing that, and now I have 10 grandchildren, so
No.
yes,
Can't
and so I still feel a responsibility to reach out to them and help them grow in the Lord too.
Yes, we could do a whole other program,
do.
couldn't we, about grandparents?
Yes, we could.
Oh, that's
We
good.
could.
That's a great idea.
Yes.
I think we'll think about that. Well, let's flip it over on the other side. What do you think congregations can do to help the elders and especially elders' wives to do the work that they've been given to do?
Well, Mike, I really believe this is a good question, and I think that often members don't think of this. They
Right.
think, well, they're there to do it, and I'll sit back. But I think really during the last several years, it has become more, the people in the congregation have become more aware that they are supposed to be the workers too, and they're pitching in there and really helping. And I think to bring things to the elder's wife's attention or the elder and say, look, we need help here, we need help here. I think this is happening more.
Right.
And also, I'm seeing it on the other side where if I know I can't do it, all the opportunities that I have, so I will go and I'll say, will you do this? Will you do this? And
Right.
I know this person has this capability, and I'm finding a really good response here of people willingly wanting to help.
Right,
And,
kind of a reciprocal thing.
That's right.
Seeing that
That's
elders
right.
also need.
And since you can't do it all, you've got to be willing to find the people to do it and ask them. And I'm saying it's great when a congregation says, "Yes, I will."
Amen. That's right.
Yeah.
And how about a tip here? Some advice. I won't say long years of experience, but
Yes, long years
of
of
experience. But what would you say to someone whose husband is about to be installed as an elder and she enters into this role? What would you say to her?
Well, probably I would say consider it a joy and not a burden. Look on it as a great opportunity for service, and don't feel burdened down, but think of it as an exciting adventure for the Lord, and that you're going to do it together with your husband.
Right. Amen. Well said. Thank you. Well, that's it for now. We have more class time to come, so stay with us here on Inside the Church of Christ. We'll be right back into our class session after a message from one of our sponsoring congregations.
Hi, this is Arnelius Crenshaw with the Northeast Church of Christ. We would love to have you come and worship with us. On Sundays, we meet for Bible study at 8:30 a.m. Morning worship is at 9:45, and our evening worship is at 6 o'clock. We meet for midweek Bible study at 7:30 on Wednesday nights, and remember, you're always welcome at the Northeast Church of Christ.
Of material and whip up 5 dresses for those 5 little girls. She did all the sewing for them through the years until they were up in high school years. She sewed all their clothes, and she was a person who could extend a meal on Sundays, which she always did. She cooked at home every Sunday for them and every meal for the family. They never ate out like people often do today, but on Sunday she knew there would be extra people there because her husband and her children would be inviting all the visitors that were at church home to eat with them. And she would always be ready to have that meal ready to extend to them. So as he thought through how that Margaret could make money stretch and food stretch and everything go around and be a support to him, he thought, yes, I think I can be an elder in this church with her help. And so he did, and for 40 years, he very effectively helped lead that congregation. You may have guessed this was my father and mother, and might seem a little overdressed with this necklace on this morning, but I wore it for a special reason because this is a gift that us 5 daughters, of whom I am the 4th, gave to my mother on her 50th wedding anniversary, and on the back there is that inscription of the 2 dates of their marriage. So I wear this and the bracelet that she gave me in memory of my mother, who was a mother who did extend the effectiveness of her husband all through their married life together. And they're both now deceased, but what a model for me and for other people she was. She was a woman who did help her husband. When God created woman for man, he did it so that man wouldn't be alone, and so he wouldn't have to face the challenges of life without a helper. Wow, what a great role he made for us women. The examples of Mrs. Job, Priscilla, and Margaret will remind you how important you are to men and to particularly, as our topic today, as a leader in the church, men as leaders in the church. One time a few years ago, I was in Brazil and spoke to a group of women who were elders and leaders' wives in São Paulo, Brazil, and the topic was named, "You Are Important." And at that time, I learned how to say it in Portuguese. I don't remember that anymore, but I do remember that we talked about the importance of the woman and how her role was such a vital one that God has given us to be the helper, the supporter of our husbands in every area of life. And today we're focusing especially on how can a woman extend the effectiveness of her husband as a leader in the church. Well, when you look into Webster and look at the word extend, it helps us in our goal today of extending and of discovering ways to extend our effectiveness. When we look at these terms it uses, it says make larger, make it go all around, extend to its full usefulness, spread to its full length, to exert completely, and to cause to move at a full gallop. Don't you love that last one? To cause to move at a full gallop. You ever think of your husband as a horse? You're saying, giddy up, giddy up. Well, maybe we shouldn't have said that. But anyway, you're trying to urge him on, to help him extend his efforts, to supply what he needs to go forward, okay? So we want to do this for the positive influence of our husbands as they lead the Lord's people. And I want us to look, and especially in these three areas, the areas of him reaching into the congregation as a servant and getting to know and to serve those people. And then especially, if we have time, maybe a little bit in the areas of handling criticism and the rough times, dealing with the rough times in a congregation. If we don't get into all those in this session, we will do some in our question and answer session, especially in those two areas of criticism and the rough times. Now, the very first thing I want you to remember in being effective in helping your husband in these areas is that right relationships are the foundation of any help that you can have to be the one to help your husband extend his effectiveness. You've got to have the right relationships. And to give a little example of this, I want to show you this little triangle that you may have seen before. At the apex is God, over on one side is me, and on the other side is others. Okay, God, me, and others. You'll have that little triangle on your handout there, and I just want you to notice just a few things about this. We could talk the whole time about it, but I want you to remember that this is the foundation of your being able to really be effective help to your husband as he leads. And that is, the very first thing is your relationship with God, okay? That's the very beginning point. Your relationship there with God is so important. It has to be strong. It has to be complete. It has to be growing. And so as your relationship is strong there, and you reach out to your husband as your other here, and his relationship is strong and growing, if you are complimenting him in that way and helping his relationship to grow and yours to grow, you can see one of the things that happens. As you both grow closer to God, what happens to you? You both grow closer to what? Each other, right. So as you are closer to each other, you can be a much more effective servants to God. So if you find out that you don't feel very close to God, you can't feel very close to your husband. So you need to work on your relationship to God continually. That means your own private, personal prayer time and study time, examining your own life, where your faults and your sins may be, and helping God to look into your heart and find those and correct those. So you have to have that very, very positive thing going on in your life there about your relationships. Now, what about you and directly to your husband, and how how do you really treat your husband? How about your relationship directly with him? Your relationship with God you're working on. Now what about when you reach out here to your husband in that relationship? Well, I just want to briefly illustrate this by a couple of visual aids that I have brought, okay? The first one is a pillow, okay? A pillow. When you look at this pillow, just call out good and loudly some illustrations about what you think about this pillow. Tell me describe it. Not the color, but the qualities. Comfortable. What else? Soft. What else? Giving. What's another word for giving? Flexible. Good. What else? Squeezy. Okay, I like that one. What about, do you mind if I throw it at you? No, you don't mind, do you? It's going to be soft. You're going to catch it, right? Okay. Okay, good.
It can also be supportive.
Supportive. Very good. Okay, now, compare that with a rock. My whole thing is just to remember, be a pillow, not a rock, to your husband. Okay. What's this rock like? Hard. What else? Solid. Okay. What else? What can it do to you? Hurtful. Okay. If you could feel this, you would find out it is cold. Okay. What else? It's rough. It's not soft. Is it comfortable? Do you want me to throw it at you? No. Okay. I won't. But this is just to help you remember that you should be like a pillow, not a rock. I used this illustration down in Brazil one time. And one of the women in the class told me that she had not been allowed to come to Bible class from her husband's point of view because he thought it was taking too much of her time, and he wanted her to stay home and do her work and cook his food and be there and stop going out to those classes and things. But she'd come off to this class anyway. She begged off and got to come to this class. When she heard this, she said, I'm going to go home and be a pillow to my husband. I'm going to be like that pillow. I'm going to be that kind of a wife to him. After a few days, he said, what has happened to you? What has come over you? You have changed. She said, I learned something at ladies' class. She said, I learned that I should be like a pillow, not a rock to you. He said, would you please go back to more of those classes? So, the whole point is, your relationship with your husband does affect how he serves. And it's got to be warm and caring and loving. And another point or two on your little sheet there that we may talk a little bit more about later is becoming one with your husband. That's a continual thing, and your relationship with him makes so much difference. The third thing, take a little honey with you on your sheet. This is a reference to the time back in the Old Testament when Jacob sent his...
Well, we're back in the pew for another interview. This time I've asked Tracy Clapp to be with us. As you know, the seminar was for both elders and ministers and their wives, and I've invited Tracy, who is the wife of Kenneth Clapp, the associate minister at the Choctaw congregation, to be with us today. What do you think about the seminar? What have you learned?
Well, I've really enjoyed it so far. I really enjoyed Joanne Stafford's class this morning. It really reminded me of things that I needed to do to be supportive of Kenneth and his work and his ministry, and what I can do as a wife to help encourage him in that.
Speaking of being a minister's wife, what are some of the misconceptions that people have about ministers' wives now that you've been married several years and you've been in the work?
Well, one thing that I've thought of is it seems like a lot of the misconceptions, at least for me when I started out as a minister's wife, I brought on myself.
Oh.
Expectations I had that were unrealistic, that maybe other people didn't have, that I had to overextend myself and be everywhere all the time and be involved in every little thing that was going on. There are people that do expect that of ministers' wives and expect them to be perfect all the time, and that's just not possible.
Well,
but
my wife is perfect, but I mean...
But, just to be the super Christian woman is... a hard task.
So you don't
for
think that
anyone
people
to
are
live
really
up to.
expecting that? You think?
From my experience, it seems like most people don't really expect that. I think a lot of ministers' wives bring that on themselves.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know, they feel the pressure to live up to a certain standard that maybe isn't really there.
Right. Good. And how are some of the ways that you have found to help Kenneth in his work?
Well, one of the biggest things that I try to do is to help him in his ministry is to encourage him and support him in what he's doing. You know, listen to him. You know, just from day to day.
Right.
And
kind of a sounding board
right.
type idea for ideas.
Right.
Good.
And especially since he works with youth, you know, I try to help him plan activities and go with him on trips and, you know, just be an extra
a lot of
person
travel
there
for
him.
Youth ministers, right?
Yes,
and
there
associate
is.
ministers. And if you had to, you know, if you had to do it all over again, what are some of the things that you might change or try that you didn't try? Maybe some advice, because there may be some gals out there who are themselves going to, you know, enter the ministry with their husbands. Any tips?
Well, I know one thing that, just me personally, that I feel like I need to work on and improve, and one thing that Joanne talked about in her class was, as women, especially being ministers' wives, we know a lot more about the people in the congregation and their needs, and just remembering to reach out to those people, you know, to visit, send cards. You know, there's lots of times I'll think, oh, you know, that person's sick, I need to send them a card, but then I don't get around to doing it sometimes, and so I feel like that's one thing that I need to work on, you know, that I've tried to improve over the
kind of a
last few
communication
years.
aspect.
Yes, just to really reach out to people more, because I have the opportunity to do that.
Well, great. Well, thank you.
Well, thank
Wasn't
you
so
for
bad,
having
was
me.
it?
No,
No,
not
it was
too bad.
Well, that's our program for this week. We're happy that you were able to tune us in. If you need any copies of the program, if this can be helpful, we'll give you the address and the phone number from our congregation where you can order some of these tapes. Next week, another program, same time, same station. Be here for that. Thank you to all those who helped organize our seminar. God bless you. We'll see you again soon. Bye.
If you would like copies of this week's lesson on audio or video cassette, please contact us at telephone number 405-390-8732, fax number 405-390-8730, or visit our website at www.insidechrist.com. This program is produced by Media Missions for the Choctaw Church of Christ, Choctaw, Oklahoma. Call 405-390-8732 for times of worship or other information.
Oh, heaven is in my heart. 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 Everybody sing. Oh, heaven is in my heart. Can't you feel it? Oh, heaven is in my heart. The kingdom of our Lord is here.